Join now for tonight's hot seat with former state senator Norby Chabert, who's from the Terrebonne Parish area, the Homer area. Your district included Lafourche Parish and Terrebonne Parish when you were in elected office. But we're talking to you because I don't know if a lot of people know this or not. Edwin Edwards, his funeral is held today. He was your godfather. Your families were very close, and you delivered the eulogy earlier this morning at his final service. First off, sorry about your loss. Secondly, now, if you could just talk about this, Norby, what Edwin Edwards not just meant to you, but what he meant to the state of Louisiana. We're going to get more into your eulogy in a second and what you actually delivered today at the old state capitol, but just talk personally, what he meant to you and your family.
You know, my brother liked to joke that Edwin Edwards knew me before I knew Edwin Edwards. And his sort of really becoming close to our family began with my father, Leonard J. You know, Edwin got elected in that 72 time frame. My father got elected to the House. They had so much in common. They both came from humble and poor means, and had both been veterans, had both served on a local level, and then found themselves, serving the state of Louisiana in what would be a historic and transformative time. Dad, really liked Edwin and appreciated the fact that he really, really cared for what he would describe as his people, right? The indigent, the poor. Being from the bayou, we didn't have a whole lot of folks that were of exorbitant means. It was just good blue collar shrimpers, all field workers, humble people. Edwin cared for those people. And look, the Cajun, and we were Cajun, okay? And Edwin was Cajun. And it was the first time in our history that we had a true person that could carry the Cajun vote statewide and win. So naturally he gravitated to him when they were allowed to serve together after both being elected. They formed a strong political allegiance, but more importantly, they became dear, dear friends. And when my father, Travis, who was 42, when he found out that his wife, Viona, my lovely mother, was pregnant at the age of 40 for me, they thought they were done. All of my siblings are considerably older than me. My youngest sibling and I are 15 years apart. So it was a bit of a miracle of God that happened in those days. And when he did it, he really wanted Edwin to be my godfather. So that's how close the families were back then and still are today. And, there hasn't been a day in my life that Edwin hadn't been my godfather, good and bad times. And I've kind of had to work with that.
We're gonna get a little bit into the good, the bad, and even the ugly things that happened around 2000 with the conviction. But more importantly, let's talk about today. It was a special day for the state, a special day for Baton Rouge. Edwin Edwards is one of only a handful of four-term governors in this country, the only one in the state of Louisiana. He did a lot of things. The Constitutional Convention in 74, the open jungle primaries that we still have today, very important. You touched on the outreach to rural communities, to minority communities. You delivered the eulogy today. How do you pack all of that into a speech in front of that crowd? And if you don't mind me asking, it was a private ceremony, but can you share some of the excerpts of what you did say today?
You can't put it all into any type of eulogy. You just can't. So I didn't. My role in there, we had Governor Edwards, current Governor Edwards, Governor John Bel Edwards spoke. Lieutenant Governor Billy Nungesser spoke. Dan Bornay, the booming voice of Tiger Stadium and the PMAC, who's a Nichols graduate, by the way. I like to throw that in there. He spoke, and Brother Mickey Mangum spoke. And it was, they handled a lot of the history of Edwin, where he came from, what he did. The family just asked me to personalize it, in all honesty. So I did that. And, I just spoke about the many misconceptions. And I don't mean even near what some folks have as it relates to him being in public service, but who he was as a man. Edwin didn't drink. Edwin didn't smoke. People find that surprising when they find out about that. When you got Edwin in private circumstances, and quite often public circumstances, he was an extremely quiet and reserved and humble man. His his brother-in-law recently described him as an introverted extrovert. And I mean, this is Missy Lane's brother. And if you knew Edwin, you could see that when he showed up in the room at a place he would be. For example, in my eulogy, I talked about the first time that he ever asked me personally to do something for him. And it was just that we were at my dad's hunting camp with a bunch of friends, eating gumbo, playing cards. I was about 7 years old, and he just asked me to go run and get him a banana because everybody was carrying on and drinking and smoking. And he was just chilling and playing cards and letting everybody else in the room be big and be boisterous. And he was just listening, and he would quip and joke and all that stuff. But he knew that it was more important for him to not be this bombastic person and just be that guy that everybody wanted to spend time with. And he had a keen sense of knowing the room like that. And he always let everyone else really shine.
We covered this live earlier today, the entire ceremony that we could cover, which was the procession through 4th Street from the old Capitol in the horse-drawn carriage. Talk a little bit about his legacy. We just touched on some of these things, the Constitutional Convention, the open primary, a lot of things that he did. We would call them social justice reforms now, but he essentially hired the first Black postmaster general for the state of Louisiana. He gave minorities a chance at elected office, one of the first governors, maybe the first governor to ever do something like that. There's also the underbelly of the beast, if you will, though. There is the 2 trials in the 80s. He was hung, jury, and acquitted, and then the conviction in 2000. Does that scar a legacy of goodwill for this state? And I don't expect you to get too deep into this, but I feel like we do have to talk about the good, the bad, and that is probably the ugly of Edwin Edwards, the conviction in 2000 for the Riverboat Casino gaming scandal.
It's no question. It's a complicated legacy. You know, Scott Sternberg tweeted something today, if I recall, and Scott defends the press, and Edwin was notoriously adversarial with the press. Sometimes it was to his advantage to be adversarial with the press, but to have the lawyer for the press talking about how silly that conviction was. And I don't want to get too deep into the weeds of it, but Edwin thumped his chest that, hey, listen, I didn't do anything wrong in office and was never convicted of anything having to do with true stealing the people's money or anything like that. It was something that was out of office. There was alleged jury tampering, but again, don't want to get into all of that. It happened. He wore it. He did his time in prison. He came out. And I honestly believe that this last portion of his life was some of his best spent years. But his legacy is, in terms of what he did for the state, is unquestionable. His first 2 terms, those in the 70s, prior to the oil embargo, it really pinched Louisiana and led to the troubled times in the 80s. Though that was the Gilded Age for our state. I mean, that was when so many projects were made, in New Orleans. Just look at the Superdome, now that started under Fox.
Convention Center, absolutely right.
Yeah,
right.
That started under Governor McKiffin, but that was carried across the goal line by Edwin. I was not surprised, okay, but it was a nice thing to see a lot of folks from New Orleans make the trip to Baton Rouge and be in the room. You said it. I mean, Edwin was very much one of the, if not the, probably most inclusive governor after the true civil rights actions of the 60s, where he knew that, look, the African-American vote in New Orleans got him there, that he carried pretty much all the black boxes across the state. And he remembered that, and he was loyal to that. And they always remembered him, and they were always there for him, because once you get into office, you got to do what you say you're going to do. He fixed roads. He built charity hospitals. He improved educational opportunities for minorities across the state. He loved Southern. The Southern Band marched down the road today from the new state capitol to the old state capitol. The measure of that aspect of his legacy is unquestionable. And some of the more creative things that he did in his 3rd term, when we weren't in the Gilded Age anymore, the oil price had tanked, people were leaving New Orleans, people were leaving South Louisiana, moving to Houston, led to some difficult decisions that folks in the legislature had to deal with. But he was very much a man of his time in that time. Rather than cut services, sure, he imposed some fees on business that we're still trying to get out of. Look, I like Edwin personally. I don't agree with a lot of his politics. I love his family. But the legacy of what he was able to accomplish is unquestionable.
Final question here, because we could talk for probably this entire half hour, but we just don't have the time. Will we ever see another politician like Edwin Edwards? And I ask that because you mentioned the golden years, the 70s in Louisiana. He was in Congress in the 60s, the delegation back then with Hale Boggs and Ellender and everybody else who was part of our congressional delegation was arguably one of the strongest in the United States in the 60s. In the 70s, his state boomed. But bottom line, will we ever see anybody? Will we ever see another politician like Edwin Edwards? And I don't just mean here in Louisiana. I mean across the country. Did they break the mold when they made him?
I think they did. And I said this in my eulogy, that it's the family that suffers most when someone decides to get into public office. The politician themselves, whomever they may be, is the artful dodger, and they know how to take the slings and arrows that come at them. The family bear the brunt of it. And I've never, I've been, like I said, involved in politics and government my whole life. And I've never seen a more vicious time than now. And you wonder how much someone can take, how long they can take it for. You're seeing meteoric rises of these political careers that last, they'll get elected to the state legislature, and then in 4 or 5 years, they're a United States senator. That never happened in the old days. But also they'll serve 1 or 2 terms in the United States Senate. And next thing you know, you're putting a bow in their quote unquote political career, and it's only 25 years. It used to take you 25 years in public office to just be considered to be a United States senator. Okay. So will we ever see that type of iconism where someone can build a trust or mistrust or just that celebrity status with the public? I mean, Donald Trump's pulled it off, but you got to remember, Donald Trump's famous for being Donald Trump for 30 years before he was the president of the United States. He too can be very much said to have broken that mold. You'll see a lot of people try to do what Trump did. No one will. So I to answer your question, I don't see it happening.
I agree with you. I think they broke the mold after they made Edwin Edwards, not just for this state, but for this country. Norby Chabert, he was your godfather, former state senator. We appreciate your time. I'm sure the eulogy was delivered beautifully today. So may he rest in peace. So once again, thank you for your time. This is The Hot Seat. I'm Travers Mackel. He's Norby Chabert. You can see this entire segment starting Monday morning on all of our social media platforms.